always having technology. So one of our first choices we can make is to decide how to address a problem by doing something about it. I'm not going to give you quick fixes or necessarily even strategies, but I am going to give you some things to think about, okay? Parents in particular are positioned to teach and model healthy technology use. Okay. So talking about phones as a family, first of all, do it, right? Do it. Don't pretend that it's not there. Don't pretend it's going to go away. These are a part of our world, and you can just approach this as one of those get ready for life topics that everyone has to figure out. I've had to figure it out too. I'm still figuring it out. Decide what's best for your family. For example, no phones at the dinner table when everyone is in the car together, or no phones in the bedroom. I've done all of those. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. Why should certain times be technology free? Okay? Those are the times where we have the opportunity for relationship building, eye contact, active listening. And so when you put away the phone, you can do those things. And I've heard it from hundreds and hundreds of teenagers. My phone doesn't bother me. My phone doesn't bother me. It's not distracting me. Oh, wait a second. But it's always distracting us. So put it away. When we did dinner as a family, when we had those lovely days where we'd all sit down at the table, the phones were not there. Okay? So decide what's going to work for you and what you need. Now, taking phones to bed at night is another big one for me. That was especially big until we got into the teenage years. Okay, Brian. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about restricting content for kids and teens. First of all, should you restrict? Yes. Okay. Do it in one way or another because that's our responsibility as parents, right? We don't give little kids car keys. We don't let them take their own medication. We don't let them use dangerous appliances. There's no built-in restrictions like movies with PG-13 ratings, so we have to do it. Okay? Next slide. So I make a little bit of a distinction between kids and teens here. So for children, so this is 12 and under, we're going to talk about setting limits, okay? When they get to be teens, that's when we got to start partnering with them, okay? And then there's that really icky time between 12 and 15 where we're doing some of both. And that's by far the hardest. Is anybody there got middle school kids? God bless you. It's a wonderful, frustrating, beautiful time, right? Okay, so for 12 and under, this is where we just make it really clear. Set the limits, expectations, it's non-negotiable of screen time allowances, content restrictions, purchase restrictions, and check your child's phone. Okay, that may seem like an obvious thing, but are you allowed as parents to check your kid's phone? Yes, you have to look at it, and it's okay. And when they get to be in middle school, they're going to say, "You can't look at my phone. That's my private property." Yes, I can. And I've told my kids, I say, I'd be a bad dad if I didn't look at your phone, and I'm not willing to do that for you. I'm just honest. Okay? They don't have to like it. They just have to comply. Okay, when they get to be 12 to 16, this is where it does get difficult. So you want to still set and keep limits, but start including them in the conversation more. Listen to them. Allow them to disagree and protest. Okay, anyone can protest. Anybody can have their own opinion. And, you know, you can say to a middle school, yeah, I see your point. I completely disagree, and we're not doing that. That's hard to do. But if you do that in those tween years, you'll get some mileage out of that when your kids are in high school. Talk about the harm that can be caused to themselves and to others. Talk about prioritizing, time management. Just make them more part of the conversation. Then when they get to be 16, this is where you're starting to deal with a young adult. So fewer limits depending on the individual child, and you're going to know this if you're having conversations with them, right? Okay? Still have check-ins, still check phones, okay? You want to start talking about legal issues as they approach 18. But you do have to pull back starting at about 16, because if you don't, when they're 18, they're going to say, yeah, Nope, you don't have a say anymore. So always engage. That's my biggest encouragement to you. Okay, I'm going to touch really briefly just on pornography and other dangerous content just because it's such an icky topic. It's out there, okay? So be ready for it. So again, just keep the conversation going. Making it safe is what's important, right? Be the parent that your kid is going to come to if they get into something strange, scary, offensive, inappropriate, or illegal, okay? If you're a go-to person for those kinds of things and you can talk about pornography, that's a good thing. You can roll some of these here. Go ahead and go through all these. We'll just put them all up. It is true that exposure to porn under the age of 18 is growing, and it can absolutely happen by accident, okay? And if it happens by accident the first time, especially for a boy at age 11 or 12, we just want to pour on so much love to those kids because it totally freaked them out, and they might be interested in seeing more. So all the more reason to connect with them, okay? I get it. You know, I'm a guy too. I went through that too. And that's where you start having the conversations about what this means. What's so wrong about it? What kind of view does this give you of sexuality and relationships? How does it demoralize women or men for that matter, right? So have those conversations. Something we tell young kids in school when we're teaching about technology is that everyone online is a stranger, right? So then I remember one program my kids went to, they put up a series of slides of different people, and you know, somebody's got a cape on like this, and it's all scary, and somebody's got a violin case, and it could be a gun. And then they put up this woman, this beautiful woman in a wedding gown with flowers and a smile, and they say, "Is she a stranger?" And they all go, "No." But she is. So we have to remind our kids, everyone online is a stranger, and they may not be who they say they are. That's a lousy reality that we live in, but that's what our kids need to know. Okay? Okay. All right, let's talk about our personal use of phones. And I'm going to go into a little bit about how to prioritize. Here's some personal phone choices, questions you can ask yourself, okay? And these are really for your own reflection, because when you know what you believe about this device in your pocket, you can pass that along to your kids very naturally. So let's talk about some of these. First of all, why do I carry a phone all the time? Okay, know that. Know why you do it. Are you a doctor and you're on call 24/7? Well, maybe you are. I'm not, and I don't want to work every evening and weekend. So I carry it with me. Can we admit that we're attached to it? Okay. If I set it over here, I do feel a little bit of anxiety, right? Has anyone ever done that? Just, and you look at your phone like, is it buzzing? Okay. So anyway, know why you have it all the time. What's the most important to me regarding my phone? What's so important about it? Okay. How often do I reach for my phone? Do I grab it and look without thinking? Does it interfere with my productivity or relationships? Okay. For what apps and programs do I need notifications? Do I need visual reminders? Do I need sound? Do I need both? And why? Okay. You know, it seems the norm pretty much in a high school setting, at least, is that kids they're getting buzzed all the time. They're getting a vibration, okay? I personally don't do that. The only thing I have sound on for, or something that I want to catch my attention, is a phone call or a text. But everything else is just one of those little badges. Okay, so that's my personal limit. That's all I'm willing to do. And then if I do happen to look at my phone and I see that, you know, I'll know, okay, I can go look at that later. Okay, whatever choices we make with our phones, remember, we are modeling that for our children or for anybody that we influence, okay? So if you pull out your phone at the dinner table and say, well, this is so-and-so, I need to read it. Or if you crawl into bed at night and you're sitting there on your phone and your kid walks by and sees you on the phone, okay, you're telling them phone in bed is a good thing. Or if you're on your phone reading something, scrolling through TikTok or whatever, and your kid is trying to get your attention, you're teaching them that they're competing with that phone. So just my encouragement to you is think about those choices that you're making. Okay. Okay, you got that. All right, I'm going to share something with you that came my way quite a while ago. This is it's a matrix, 2x2 matrix, and it categorizes areas of urgent versus important and how those interact with each other. I offer this to you because I feel like it's a great guide to prioritizing our phone use. This is from a book called The Tyranny of the Urgent by Charles Hummel. Is anybody familiar with that? I see at least one head nodding out there. Yeah, tiny little book. So this is from that, but I've applied it specifically to technology. Okay? The first box, it's urgent and important, okay? These are the things that are a necessity, right? What falls into this category? Crisis, emergency, something to do with safety, pressing problems, cyberbullying, but not super common that cyberbullying falls in there. Sometimes it is dangerous and it needs our attention right away, okay? So what's happening if I believe and behave as though something is urgent but not important, okay? We're being lied to, folks. Our phone is lying to us, okay? We believe we've got to respond to this right away, but it's absolutely not important. What falls into this category are viewing and checking notifications, keeping up with streaks, interacting with strangers. How many times do you find yourself doing that? Interacting with somebody you don't even know at all. Maybe adults don't do that so much, but I guarantee you kids do, okay? They make friends that way. Reacting and responding. And this cyberbullying more often falls into this category, okay? What if it's not urgent and not important? Do we use our phones for that? We sure do. It's called waste. And how much of that do we do? Those are the advertisements, memes, trivia, scrolling, and just passing time, okay? We're wasting time, okay? None of these three categories so far, except necessity, really needs our attention, right? So what happens when it's important, but it's not urgent? Is that even real, right? This is the quality quadrant, okay? This is where you can use your phone for relationship building, for real. You know, talk to somebody on the phone. You can have meaningful recreation and entertainment, right? I sometimes like to play games on my phone, and I'll do it with a friend. Or like I have a friend who's living in Florida right now. We'll say, hey, you want to play Monopoly? So we get on a phone call, and then we play Monopoly together, okay? We're interacting. We're using our phone, but it's a relationship. Some cultural and creative opportunities fall into this category. Planning and learning, actual phone conversations, okay? So are you going to be sharing this out, sending this to folks? So yeah, I encourage you to use this. I shared this with my 16-year-old son, and I got to tell you, 16-year-old boys never compliment their parents with them knowing about it, at least. And he said, Dad, can I have a copy of that? Like, yes. Anyway, that's all I've got for you tonight. I'm going to pass the mic back to Brian.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. Yeah. I want us just to have, as a panel, a little bit of follow-up conversation about this idea of technology use. And as a reminder, you can text in questions. But I just want to hear, Patrick, you talked a lot about developing connection with your kid, especially when it comes to kind of knowing what those transitions are, what kind of, whether you're instituting those limits or you're having a conversation, especially in that 12 to 15 range. And I just want to hear from all of you, what are some healthy ways or what are some tips as far as developing connections with parents, maybe especially in that 12 to 15 age, though I know you've got young kids yourself, so if you want to share kind of what's going on with you. So.
Sure, I'll jump on that. One of my favorite things to do is just to notice. It was probably 20 years ago now, I heard a really good speaker on talking about how we kind of overdo complimenting as parents and as educators. And she was inviting us to just use the I notice phrase a lot. So I did that a lot with my kids, and I do it with students at Englewood High School. And when you notice kids, they just light up. So for me, pay attention. Pay attention to what's happening with your kid. If your kid changes their hair, say, I noticed that. If your kid wears a different color than they normally do, just say you notice it, okay? You don't have to say, wow, you look great, because then that's kind of about you. Maybe you're hoping, so then they might think they need your approval, but they don't. You just notice it. Wow, you look different today, okay?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so I think with teenagers, when I think about communication, there's kind of this shift that happens where they kind of don't want your advice anymore, or they think your advice is lame. And I always tell parents, I'll tell you, look, I may tell them the same exact things that you tell them, but they will hear it from me because they're questioning your authority, or they're questioning, do mom and dad actually know everything? And they may have seen some gaps in your knowledge, and now they're like, wait a second, maybe they don't know anything, right? So I think the more you can encourage critical thinking skills, right? Because as parents, what we want to do naturally is to instruct or to fix things for our kids. And that's very natural. It's a good thing. But as they get older, it's having conversations like, I just gave this example to one of my teens the other day, is like they come home, backpacks on the floor. Ugh. Mom's like, oh, what's wrong? Are you okay? And they're like, nothing, leave me alone. Slam the door, right? And so as a parent, you're like, excuse me, like, let me in this room right now. What is going on? And so I try to encourage my teens and my parents to start to communicate a little bit differently. And it's more questioning or being open to listening. Just kind of hearing what they have to say. And then asking them, wow, it sounds like you do have a problem there. What are you thinking you want to do about that? And just try to hesitate on some of the advice giving, because if they come to you with a problem or they come to you upset and you're like, oh, well, here's what you should do, here's how you should fix it, they will stop coming so often. Because most things that teenagers really want is for you just to feel understood. Even as for us adults, if their problem seems very trivial or easily fixed, it's so important for them to start to learn to do that for themselves. So even if you start, I love what Patrick said too, just tell them you notice something, or you just start to open the conversation for them to give you more information than you are giving them. I always think of Charlie Brown, right? The teacher's like, wah, 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 wah. So if you're in lecture mode, that is what your teenager is hearing. So if you can get them to be talking more, they are gonna listen and capture what's being said when you're in that conversation together. A whole lot more from what I've seen.
Yeah, just really fast. I think I'd only add to that, right? It's really simple, right? You've all heard it, but just open-ended questions, right? It's questions without expectation of what the answer is going to be, judgment about what the answer is going to be, invitation for them to come in their uncertainty into the conversation, that they don't have to have it all together or bring a report to you of how it's all going, but just the open-ended question that allows them to be in process is a really great way to let them know that you're really wanting to hear them, understand them, yeah, but I know we have a short time.
Yeah, no, this is great. I think one of the things I'm thinking of as you all are sharing is the encouragement to you all to be learners of your kids, be students of your kids. And that's not just like once and you figured it out, but as they grow, as they develop, particularly in that 12 to 16, every week they might be a different person. And so continue to be a learner about your kids. We've got a question that was texted in, and that is, what would your advice be for those of us with younger kids? Thank you. I'm wondering the same thing. To help us shape good habits with technology now. Younger kids starting out shaping good habits.
So at the risk of sounding repetitious, first of all, know what your beliefs are about your phone and know what your own habits are, okay? To me, that's the modeling phase. They're learning what they see. So if you don't want your kid to be on their phone all the time when they finally get one, don't be on your phone when you're around them. I don't know how to be more
No,
simple
I think
than
that's
that.
great. I think, yeah.
Yeah, if I can just like give an illustration from our own context here in church. I know I've heard Billy, I think, say a few times in different sermons over the years talking about a rule of life. And I think it's just as applicable to talk about a rule of technology. What are the guiding principles for how we engage this, and do we follow it ourselves? And when we don't, how do we model to our kids making it right, acknowledging that we didn't, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I love what both of you are saying is get ahead of it. Don't let the one of your points, Patrick, that you didn't highlight is your technology managing you, or are you managing your technology? I love that. Thank you. We are going to keep moving for the sake of time, but you can continue to text in your questions. I'll stop saying that. You guys know. All right. So our next topic is Marinda, and she's going to talk a little bit about social media.
Make sure my technology works. Okay, social media. Whew. There's a lot to cover here, I feel like. We're also going to touch on anxiety a little bit as well. So just to start off with, I think the question I hear the most from parents is social media the reason that teens have so much mental health issues now? We know there's an uptick. Anxiety is the top one for sure. And so I think when we look at the timeline of everything, we know that smartphones are about 15 years old. Facebook has been around now for about 18 years. So it's like, oh, this must be what's changed, okay? Now, there is definitely truth to that, but I want to unpack this, and I want to try to help us look at it and understand it as much as possible, especially from a teen's perspective. So we're going to kind of address this question. We're going to look at the positives of social media. There are some. And then the negatives, which you're probably all familiar with a little bit more, and probably why you're here tonight. So we'll talk about those negatives for sure. And then we'll kind of go into like, well, what do we do? Like kind of how do we solve that? Okay, so let's start with positives. So here is a Pew Research. Now this is 2018, and I would love to see some updated research post-COVID, okay? I feel like anecdotally from my teens, there was kind of a mix with how social media aided them in shutdowns, remote learning. It was a connector, but then also a feeling left out a lot too. So anyway, so this is pre-COVID. I don't know if it'll be the same now or if it's different. And this is according to teenagers, okay? So we do see that 81% of teens say that social media makes them feel more connected to what's going on in their friends' lives. 71% feel they have a place to show their creative side. 69% say they feel more in touch with their friends' feelings. They can talk to peers of a diverse group, support different causes. 68% say they feel they have people to support them during tough times. And good news, only 9% say that they delete or restrict posts because they don't want their parents to see, okay? So now this is coming from a teen's perspective, okay? And we have to remember, like, we're dealing with this 15, 18 years. So if you have a teenager today, they just don't know a world where we didn't have social media, where we didn't have Twitter, where we didn't have Instagram, and Facebook is like really uncool, in case you guys don't know. Not cool for the teenagers. Their top social media sites are, number one is Snapchat, which is you send a message, it's read, it disappears. It's the little ghost symbol. If you guys don't have, I don't even use Snapchat. I'm like, what is this thing? I don't know. I'm so old now. And then their second is now TikTok. TikTok just kind of rose over the past couple years. And then Instagram. So Instagram's still cool, which is what millennials use a lot too. So this is a world that, the only time they don't have their technology is if it's taken away from them. And they're never going to feel like that's a positive thing because they feel very disconnected from what's going on socially. So just keep that in mind. But this is from their perspective. They feel very positively about it. Other things could include, it can be very valuable support, especially for those who experience exclusion or who have disabilities or chronic illness. It's a great form of entertainment. Self-expression, which is really important for the teenage years, is figuring out their identity, being able to express themselves. They can interact across geographical barriers, and they can learn about a variety of subjects. I know I have some kids who just nerd out on YouTube and like become experts at something because it's just right there at their fingertips. And it may also actually help with avoid depression in some ways. Okay, so it's not all bad. It's kind of my point to start with the positives, because we're going to delve into the negatives, which is kind of the harder stuff, but I just wanted to start there with the positive. Okay, so same from Pew Research. 45% do say they feel overwhelmed by all the drama on social media. 1 in 4 say they feel pressure to only post content that makes them look good to others and that will get lots of comments or likes. 26% say it does make them feel worse about their own life. And only 37% feel they can find trustworthy info on social media. So kind of that feeling of, I don't really know what's real, and that's confusing. Okay, obviously it can cause distractions, disruption in sleep. There's exposure to bullying, rumor spreading, unrealistic views of people's lives, peer pressure, sexting, sexual predators, pornography, all of that, okay? And a 2019 study found that spending more than 2 to 3 hours a day using social media heightened risk for mental health problems. And then another study in 2019 in the UK showed that using social media more than 3 times per day predicted poor mental health and well-being in teens. So we have 15, 18 years of research now, which is a lot and not a lot all at the same time, but it's pretty obvious, like what it is and how much is detrimental, which is helpful, but really hard because the average is like 7 or 8 hours that they're on their phones every day. So just to get a little more serious as well, we'll talk about, this is from Addiction Center. And this is just to kind of help us understand, like, why do they want to do this so much? Or why are we on our phones so much, right? So it all has to do with your brain and that lovely little reward center in your brain and a lovely little chemical called dopamine. You guys have probably heard of that one. So this study by Harvard University shows that social media usage lights up the same parts of your brain that ignite when taking an addictive substance. The dopamine levels rise, causing the individual to feel pleasure. It feels good. It feels really good. Social media provides an endless amount of immediate rewards in the form of attention from others for relatively minimal effort. You post a picture with a filter. You get a bunch of likes. Super easy, right? And then the brain rewires itself through this positive reinforcement, making people desire the likes, retweets, and recognition even more. This becomes problematic when someone relies on social networking sites as a coping mechanism to relieve stress, loneliness, or depression. And it can lead to ignoring real-life relationships, work or school responsibilities, and even physical mental health issues. Okay, so you at least know what's happening in their brain and why it's hard to pull away and why you keep coming back for more, okay? So with this, let's talk about anxiety, okay? As I said before, anxiety is the most common mental health challenge that young people face, and it is the top reason why students seek mental health services in college today. So in severe cases, anxiety is stopping teens from doing homework, reaching out to friends, even leaving their homes, and leading to depressive and suicidal thoughts. I can't tell you how many teenagers I have who don't want to learn how to drive because they're terrified. They're terrified of the responsibility. They're terrified of all the bad things that could happen when they're driving. They just don't even want the freedom. I mean, I just didn't even care. I just wanted my license so I could drive myself. And the ones who are riddled with anxiety just don't even want to learn to drive. Okay, so obviously with that 15, 18-year mark, experts have seen a rise in the sleeplessness, loneliness, worry, dependence, anxiety, poor self-esteem, insecurity, and sadness among teens that coincides with the release of the first iPhone 15 years ago. So we have enough data to kind of be able to make that correlation. So for social media specifically, these are some of the stressors that teens report, right? So seeing people post about an event they weren't invited to. Maybe this even happens to you as an adult, right? You kind of feel left out, it hurts your feelings. Just remember, a teenager is very hormonal, so they're gonna experience that feeling magnified, okay? It's a real feeling, just magnified. And you're like, it's not that big of a deal, but you know you feel the pang too. It hurts when somebody excludes you. Feeling the pressure to post positive and attractive content about yourself. Feeling pressure to get comments and likes on your post. Having someone post something about you that you cannot change or control, and it happens over and over and over. If somebody takes a little clip of you, embarrassing moment, post it, people are watching it over and over and over and over again. It's magnified. That bullying can just get magnified. Feeling replaceable, like, oh, I had an issue with my friend and they're not talking to me. Oh, and now they're posting pictures hanging out with somebody else. I've been replaced as a friend. Too much communication. I just had a client telling me, like, my boyfriend texts me nonstop and I feel like I have to answer him all the time. So it's just never ending. There's no break. There's no break from it. And then FOMO and needing to be attached to the device. So as Patrick was saying, they're just constantly getting that vibration that's a little, even that vibration is a little hit of that dopamine, like somebody's contacting me, or I've got a like, or I've got a message, like, ooh, feels good. And it's hard to put it down. It's hard to step away from it. Okay, so that is social media. I do want to open it up just a little bit, not to say that social media is the only anxiety inducer, okay? So a few other things I will say that has come up in research is for teens is like local community trauma. Okay, so say you're a teen and you just had a tornado rip through, or we had a bunch of those fires up in Boulder, right? Your home's been burned down, right? That can cause a lot of stress in the family, a lot of stress for the teen, their world's upside down. Certainly poverty. If you don't have your basic needs met, you're gonna have more anxiety. Reports of violence all around the world. So this is something I hear, I've even heard from young kids too. Just they know kind of what's going on, like Ukraine right now, right? And they're kind of like, I don't really understand what's happening. They're detached from it, but it kind of scares them a little bit too, okay? Not having a break from social media at all, right? Like I said, it's 24/7. I remember in high school, I got to go home and I had a break, right? Unless somebody called me on like an actual phone line, okay? I did get a cell phone when I was like a junior, but it was like a beep, bop, boop, bop phone, okay? Like you could only dial somebody. So I had a break. It was lovely. They don't have a break. And that can cause a lot of stress as well. The most interesting thing, and this is from a study at Harvard University, is achievement pressure. And this is seen in many middle and upper middle class communities. So this is the pressure to excel across academic subjects and in a wide range of extracurriculars, culminating in the stress of putting together an impeccable college admissions package. I will tell you, I've had clients who tell me, I messed up this test, or I messed up this grade in this class, I will not have a job someday. Like, we take it through. I'm like, okay, so you got a bad grade. What does that mean? Well, it means I will have a lower GPA, which means I may not get into the college I want to get into, which means, and they go down the line, I won't have a job that I enjoy or make money. One of my clients told me they won't have a nice house, right? I was like, oh boy, it's a lot of pressure to have a nice house when you're 12, okay? I'm still trying to get there. No, I love my house. It's great. So there's these other factors too. I don't want it to be like social media is the devil and just exit out of their lives and they'll have no anxiety ever again. There's other factors, and I love what Patrick said and John has said too. It's just getting to know your child individually and what their stress is. What are the things that, you know, I'll have kids whose parents are like, we just want you to try your best in school, like as long as you're not failing. And these kids are like, I must be a straight A student. Like it has to be straight A's, right? Get to know their stressor and try to work with them on that individually. Okay, so how do we solve this problem? I have all the answers. I'm just kidding, I don't. But some things that can help, and Patrick said this a lot too, is just trying to decide for your family what the rules are that you want to have and that you and whoever else is living in the home models that. It's really important to model that. And consider smartphone alternatives for kids younger than 13. There's this great organization out there called Wait Until 8th grade, not 8 years old. Wait until 8th. And I believe it was actually started by Melinda Gates, who's Bill Gates' wife. And if you guys don't know this, a lot of the Silicon Valley CEOs do not let their children have the technology that they produce. So that should tell us a lot right there, okay? But she helped start this, and it's just the idea of just don't give them a smartphone when they're younger than 13. And the average age right now is 10 or 11, just so you guys know. And if you've already given your kid a smartphone, I am not shaming you. It's okay. Just consider it if you haven't done it yet, or consider, it's really hard once you give it to take it away. So there's other things you can do if they already have it and they're younger than 13. There are watches out there now that, I forget the name of the watch, but it has You can program like 5 phone numbers in it. They have like canned text lines where they're like, need a ride or whatever. You can decide what it says and they can pick that. And you can track them, right? So some parents, I get it, as young as, starting 3rd, 4th grade, they may be spending time more with other friends, going to other people's houses. You kind of want to know where they are. I would think about why you want to know, but I get it. And there are some smart-like phones out there. There's a Gab phone. What are all the other ones? I can't think of them right now. Jabberwocky. No, I can't think of them. There's like 4. And these are phones that don't have access to the internet. So access to internet is kind of where the devil lies, okay? This is where they accidentally run across porn, or they're on YouTube and nobody's putting protections on the YouTube on their phone, and they're seeing things they didn't mean to even see. So there's lots of options out there that were not there 10 years ago, which is really cool. So just consider that. Also consider emotional and mental maturity before giving phone and social media. Also, if you go to Wait Until 8th website, they have a great 6 questions to just think through for your kid. Like, do they have a lot of drama in their life? Are they constantly upset about drama? Then you probably shouldn't give them social media, maybe not even a smartphone. Can they have a conversation with another adult who's not their parent? That's like a real conversation. If they can't do that, they're probably not ready for smartphone or social media, okay? So there's great information on there to kind of help you. And then kind of like everything that Patrick was talking about, set up those boundaries and expectations and a contract prior to giving over the phone or social media, and stick to it. Stick to the contract. Maybe make them sign something too. It's really hard, and I know I just have littles right now, but my struggle is with the iPad, and that I can entertain them for 30 minutes and get something done. It's really hard when they're little. It's so hard when they're teenagers. Parenting is hard, right? But it's really hard not to just here's the iPad, leave me alone so I can do something and think straight without somebody constantly needing something from me. So I get it. It's hard to resist just giving them something and hoping they'll figure it out. Okay, there's so many resources out there. We will get to you guys as well. I do know this, Android phones are a little bit better with parental, what's the word? Controls, thank you, than the iPhone. Apple is such a booger. They make it really hard for you to enact some of those parental controls. So there's some other things to consider. Okay, having lots of awkward conversations about sexting, porn, and sexual predators. I hate that this is reality in our world. I really do. But sometimes it just happens and they don't know what's happening if they haven't heard certain terms, or there's plenty of resources out there to help you walk through that. It just is something that happens so rampantly, and it's an interesting shift we've seen in our culture, right? Of ooh, it feels scary to let my kid go outside. What if something happens to them? I'd rather them be inside and I give them a device, right? The device is a little bit more dangerous statistically than them running out to the park to play. But it's a false sense of security, right? So just be very wise. I think, and all of this, I don't want you guys to have a spirit of fear, because fear leads you to feeling a little bit out of control, and feeling out of control makes you anxious. Okay, we're trying to avoid anxiety here. So not to have a spirit of fear, but we are called to be gentle as doves, be gentle with your teens, but also be shrewd as serpents. Don't be surprised by this. Don't try to turn away from it because it sounds too scary, but kind of face it head on and get yourselves equipped to kind of walk through this with your teenager. And then band together with other parents in your community. Okay, so this is the biggest thing, right? I tell all my friends this now, and we have little kids. I'm like, no one's getting a smartphone before they're 13. And let's all do it so none of our kids can be like, but all my friends have one. And they beg you and beg you and beg you. And if your children have not begged you till you're going insane, and they're like that 12 to 16, it is coming. If it hasn't already come, they will bug you, because it is, like I said, 10 to 11 is the age when they first get it, and they want to be like their friends. So band together, this is why I love doing it here at Wellspring. If we can have kind of that community cultural shift together, they won't feel that FOMO. They won't feel they're so different from everyone else, which becomes so important when they're teenagers of kind of trying to figure out that identity. I could talk about this forever and ever, but I think I'm going to stop there. And we'll get, like I said, we have more resources we can get to you guys too. And then if you have questions, please text those in and we can address any specific questions that you have, especially social media feels so tricky. And teens are really smart. They know how to like delete things. And I know it said that only 9% of teens feel they have to delete or restrict what their parents see. I don't know if I believe that number, to be honest. I'm always thinking, I'm like, well, these researchers are asking teens. Are they really going to tell adults what they think? They really want us to like have the weapon to like take this away from them. So anyway, I'm not saying they're all so deceptive, but they love what they love and they know what they know. Okay, so I will stop there.
Yeah, I have some follow-up questions.
Okay.
Anyone on the panel can ask this, but what are some ways for parents to stay connected to their teenagers, to their kids who are engaging in social media? Like, how would a parent go about knowing what their teen was up to, for example?
First thing I would say is try to get it yourself. I did this with TikTok because all my teens were talking about TikTok. I'm like, what is TikTok? What is this even? I don't even understand it. So I got it. It's amazing. It's very addictive. I had to delete it because I was like, this thing popped up and it's like, you've been on here for a while. Are you sure you should like take a break? And I was like, wow, this is really powerful. So I would just say, get it and like try it. I like get Snapchat and you and your spouse like make accounts and like try to figure it out with each other. So you feel like you have some knowledge of what it is. So that's the one I don't know. And the top three, if you have Instagram, you kind of know how Instagram works. But I think that can be really helpful is if you actually know what they're using. There's a great, it's called the Culture Translator, and they have all the information that parents need to know in the teen world. Right? I use it all the time because I work with teens, and I'm like, oh yeah, I totally know what that is. Oh my gosh, I have no idea. I've got to go look this up. And that's a great resource too, just to kind of understand their world.
I think my kids were maybe 15 before we let them take phones to their bedroom. So one of the things I always just used to ask them is, what do you like about your phone? I mean, honestly, I don't really care, but I showed an interest. And when I ask them that, you know, then they'll volunteer maybe what they're looking at. And I shouldn't say I don't care. I do care. It doesn't interest me in the same way. So every once in a while, you know, they'll come to me and say, "Hey, Dad, look at this. Check this out." And I'm not sure they would do that if I hadn't showed an interest. I just don't like to pretend that the phone's not interesting. And I think it's a mistake to approach it as, oh, you don't need that phone's bad, or all those things you're doing are bad, because just like she just shared, they're getting hit with dopamine constantly. You're never going to convince them that what they're doing isn't good for them. Okay, so engage it. What do you like about it?
Yeah. You don't have to add anything. That's right.
Great.
I have another question. Thinking particularly of our parents of older teens, and maybe they're kind of taking an assessment of their family, of their teens, or they've already known this. How could they help maybe walk back tech usage or bring their teenager to a healthier engagement with social media if they look at what's going on and they think, oh, maybe this is a little too much, maybe this is contributing to my child's anxiety or how they're feeling about something?
I really would love Patrick to answer this as a parent because
I will.
Okay, because it's really easy, I think, as a therapist, because I can come in and challenge the teen, and they won't feel like I'm their parent, like trying to take away their privilege or take away their, you know, just to be a parent, just to be a mean parent, right? So it's really easy with older teens because we'll start to make connections with how they're feeling, and I'll be like, how often are you on your phone? Like, what social media websites do you really like? And then sometimes I'll make them pull out their phone and it shows like how much time they spend on each app, and they'll be like, oh, I didn't even realize. I'm like, isn't that interesting? And then it can kind of be a conversation about like, what would it be like if you took a break and just didn't hop on to TikTok for 24 hours just to see? Let's just experiment. Let's just see what that's like for you. Or Snapchat or Instagram. And they'll be like, well, okay, I guess I could try it. Older teens, not those young ones. The 12 to 15, it's just rough. They think you're crazy. Like, why would I ever take a break? If I take a break, I will miss out on the conversations that are happening, and I will be socially ostracized or something like that. But the older teens are pretty good about taking that break. I just had a teen recently go on a mission trip for 2 weeks, and no phones were allowed in a group of peers with no phones. And they came back and were like, I had some of the best conversations of my life. And I'm so annoyed, like I have to check my phone again all the time. And I'm like, wait. What if you changed your relationship with your phone? And they're like, oh, I guess I could do that. So the older teens sometimes, I think, have more of that critical thinking, prefrontal cortex developed where they can kind of maybe see the correlation and think, maybe this is why I'm really anxious, or why I always feel jealous, or I feel left out, or that type of thing. But as a parent, I would love to hear what Patrick has to
So
say.
actually something, I feel bad for my kids and my wife because I'm a psychologist, and what kid wants that? So it's maybe someday they'll appreciate it. But one of the things we did a lot, and I would just call a family meeting, I'd say it's a family meeting, and I'd see the eyes roll when they were teenagers. But it was, I would always start out saying, this is what I notice. You notice I use notice a lot. And then I say, what do you guys notice? And so then I would listen to them. And then, then I'd pick up on common threads of, what's going on. And, well, what do you think we should do about this? And I always put it on them. And they were allowed to disagree with me, and then I was allowed to disagree with them. Sometimes that was around phones, but it's not just around phones. Right now, it's around when kids come home from college. There's a lot of activity and negativity in our house, and so, Dad, call a family meeting. Let's talk about this. This is what I notice. This is how I'm feeling. How are you guys doing? So that's great.
Does
that help?
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah, I think not jumping straight to assumptions, right? I love what you described there, right? Is what do you notice? And I think that's one of the tough things is checking our assumptions as we begin that intervention. We see the negative reaction as the phone gets thrown on the couch, and then we think, oh, it's the phone. We got to lessen the screen time. And that might be true. But also, where did the problem start? Like, we don't want to reverse the chicken and the egg, right? Was the problem starting on the phone and now it's coming out into non-phone life, or is the problem starting in real life and then it's getting exacerbated in social media land and then coming back out the other end? So checking our assumptions about what's going on, what started what, and what role did the phone and the social media play in that? But it is not, it's just a tool, and it's either being used to help or harm. It's very rarely neutral. So.
Awesome, thank you. We're going to keep moving to our third topic. Jonathan is going to talk a little bit about video games. Just the single one, video game.
Just one game. Okay. This is a fun topic for me. I'm excited to talk to you guys about it too. Not just because I'm a therapist, but also because I like video games. So I guess my first question really going into this is, questions really are for your own reflection. And if you guys want, feel free to engage and, speak up. But truly, I just want to throw out some questions. Just initially, what comes to mind when you think of video games? What are the images that fill your head? What was it? Fortnite. Yeah, I'm sure there's a few people who can agree with having heard Fortnite theme songs or Fortnite dances a few too many times. What does it mean to be a gamer? Who is a gamer? Are we? Yeah, I like that, anyone who games, but nevertheless, like some of those stereotypes around gaming have definitely shifted and changed over time, right? So the ways that we might have thought about gaming as being a predominantly male or boy-dominated thing, that is going out the window. So as of the research from just this year, pick a number of how many, what the percentages of gamers that are women or girls in America today. Just pick 30-something? 30%? Cool. Any other guesses? 50? I like that. That's very egalitarian. It's not quite there yet. It's about 45% actually of US gamers are female. Yeah. You might not have guessed that, right? And that speaks to how much things have changed. There's a lot of baggage that comes along with talking about video games, baggage from our culture generally, baggage from our Christian culture, if those are some of the influences that are informing your job as parents. And there's a lot of baggage that comes from our kids' neighborhood culture, our kids' online cultures, what are happening in their school cultures at the lunch table around what they're playing. What's happening on Discord as they talk about their games or their Twitch streams that they're watching or producing for that matter. So there's a lot of baggage that comes into conversations about video games. We don't have time to tackle all of it, but I just want to throw out there to you guys, this is a big topic, a really complicated topic, and also one that's really fun to engage, okay? And it can be fun for you guys to engage too. Just a few other things to maybe mess with our misconceptions about video games. Of the total population of people who play video games, only about 30% of video gamers are under 18. Yep, the average age of a person who plays video games these days is 34. Yep. Yes. And this might be a little bit uncomfortable, but that probably indicates that video games are not just a topic for our kids. It's a conversation for our families. And if there's baggage for video games generally, that means that our relationship with them as adults, as parents, as caregivers, is part of the conversation too, not just their usage and how much time they spend doing it. Also, whenever you think of video games, you might think of the traditional console, right? The PlayStation 4 or 5 now, the Xbox, the PC gamer, that kind of thing. But you were surprised earlier about the statistics about women gaming. Well, it turns out that Candy Crush is really, really popular amongst women, and so you might not have thought of yourself as a gamer, but if there's Candy Crush on your phone, or if there ever has been Candy Crush on your phone, ladies, you're a gamer. Welcome to the club. And there are still differences, generally speaking, right, amongst women. Puzzle games, word games tend to be more popular than action and adventure games. Amongst men, action and adventure games tend to be more popular than puzzle and word games. But because the times are changing, it isn't a hard binary. Men and women play both, or all four of those genres. So when it comes to a conversation about this, I know that there's a lot of fears that can come along with talking about video games and our kids' development. Fears that it'll hurt my child's studies or education. It'll cause them to be distracted from schoolwork. It'll lead to attention problems. It is going to have, objectionable content, like Patrick and Marinda have suggested about other technologies. It'll damage their mental health or their physical or cognitive development. It'll reduce the amount of healthy social interaction, or it'll even make them addicted. Are a lot of times the things that I hear as a therapist and things that I have read online that are oftentimes the concerns of parents. And research bears some of that out, but probably less than you might think. There are negative correlations between video game use and getting a good night's sleep, being distracted when you have homework to do, avoiding real-world problems. It's easier to hop online and escape. And yet, the impact on sleep is pretty small as long as you're not playing a video game within 30 minutes of going to bed, surprisingly enough. And the tendency to avoid real-world problems is not something that's unique to video games, right? We can do that all sorts of ways. We don't have to use video games to avoid our problems. When it comes to addiction, that's a tricky one. And I just want to throw out a couple of ideas about this because addiction is a heavy word and a word that a lot of people are concerned about when they see their kids or their spouse or themselves playing video games when they know that maybe they shouldn't. The short word on it is that addiction's a complicated subject. And sometimes we can throw that word around because our anxieties get exacerbated when our expectations don't meet up with reality or our fears come into play about some of those possible negative outcomes, right? And so we might throw around the word addiction, oh, my child's addicted, or I'm afraid of them becoming addicted to technology. But oftentimes I think what we're seeing instead is not actually true addiction, which is usually like associated with physical dependence and withdrawal and the inability to function without it. Like what Miranda was saying earlier about the dopamine hits is real. And also, it's not quite the same thing as alcohol dependence. Thank goodness. A 2-week break from social media means, oh, I can live without it. Whereas somebody who, unfortunately, has a substance dependence, that's a different kind of addiction. And so when it comes to talking about our fears of addiction with video game usage, I would rather invite you guys to consider what is the use that is happening. How is the video game potentially being abused? Is it being used for a purpose that it was not intended? Is the video game being used to avoid real-world problems? Is it being used to because I need to play it to feel good? I need to play it to feel good about myself, or I need to play it so that I don't feel bad? To, in a sense, like self-medicate my depression or my anxiety. And all of those things are maybe yellow flags, cause for concern, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily addiction. I see a hand. I want to encourage you to text or message Brian so that I can get through here. But thank you. I'm so glad that you're engaged. So, are there some possible negative correlations between video games and our mental health? Totally. Are there also some really great positive opportunities with our mental health and gaming? Also true. Interestingly enough, studies have shown that gaming 1 to 2 hours a day actually improves your social outcomes as opposed to not gaming at all. Now, going over 5 hours a day, that actually starts to have negative consequences. But again, that's 5 hours a day, many days a week, over many months of time. There is a longitudinal stacking effect there of that kind of gaming habit over time. So yeah, there are pro-social consequences to playing video games. And so some of the reflections I would maybe invite is to consider, instead of rushing right to addiction or very loaded terms about mental health and video game use, consider frequency, intensity, and duration of video game engagement. How often is my child playing video games? Daily, weekly, only on weekends? How intensive is the game session? How does it affect their mood, their energy level, their view of self and others, and how long does the game session last? Is it a couple hours? Is it 5+ hours, longer, etc.? All of those are factors to consider that help rein in some of our own anxieties, potentially as parents, about what their usage is doing or possibly having negative, harmful effects on them. Yeah, as far as intensity goes, yeah, Katie, you're right. Last summer, 2 summers ago, I was playing Call of Duty with Jeff, and my heart was racing so hard I had to go out to the backyard and sit in my hammock for like a half an hour and like feel my heart rate go down. And I was like, no, I can't do that, Jeff. That's too intense. It's not good for me. So I don't play first-person shooter, multiplayer online games that make me feel like I'm about to die. Yeah. So I think some questions to reflect on are maybe what role does gaming play in my child's life? What themes are present in their gaming? And those themes might scare us, but actually, are they okay for our kid to be learning about as long as we're engaged with them in the process? How can I invite my child into a shared awareness of the role that gaming plays in their own life? Like the I noticed question. Hey, I noticed that after you logged off, you were really, really angry for a while. And that happened. What do you think's going on with that? Right? Invite them to be aware of their own self and the relationship there. Also, I just want to throw out there, like, rather than video games being a barrier to connection, right? I've seen it suggested that most kids actually want their parents to know what they're playing or want to know about their world. They want their parents to be engaged or interested in what's happening there. Does that mean they want them to know everything that's happening there? Probably not. But it's a sign of their parents caring about them that they know what's happening in their world and what they're building in Minecraft, or what their high score is in Call of Duty, or what their proficiency is in this game that they're playing, that they're proud of, that means something to them. If it means something to them, I just want to throw out there that it should mean something to you, to recognize their own achievement or skill or development that they're working on. A major concern has been about video games and the pandemic. Really fun research showed from the Oxford Internet Institute that yes, video game use spiked during lockdown. It's true. Yeah, big shocker, right? There's this thing called the weekend effect where, when we have work or school, we don't play as much during the week, but then on Saturday and Sunday and Friday night, we tend to play a lot. And during COVID lockdowns, that went away. You probably all saw that, right? No one knew what day it was. They just knew that they were done with their assignments and they needed to play and get online. And so some parents were also afraid, hey, does that mean that my kid's going to be addicted because they've played more Call of Duty this week than they've done homework? And what we saw actually was that after the lockdowns lifted, the usage of video games went back to pre-pandemic levels. I think people are hardwired to want to be face-to-face, to want to do the normal tasks of living that they do. And so while video games did get used more, we also saw that during the pandemic, there was about 50% of video game players reported that it helped them feel happier. 42% said it made them feel less anxious about the world. 46% said that it helped them feel less isolated. And 49% said that it helped them feel connected to their friends. So when we can't get the real world connection that we long for and that we need, it turns out that a lot of times video games actually serve a really important social function in our worlds. And if we dismiss that, we can inadvertently dismiss real needs that our kids have. It turns out feeling happier, less anxious, less isolated, and more connected are really good markers for lower mental health issues, right? So the last thing I want to throw out there, I know time is short, is that video games are a huge world. And it can feel really overwhelming to learn about or to dive into or to play with your kids. And as far as that goes, give yourselves a hand. Our culture has been growing in this area. In 2008, the Pew Research said that I think it was 30% of parents played a video game with their kid once a week. As of this last year, it's 67%. So congratulations. I'm proud of you guys for being more engaged in your kids' video game worlds. Do it more. Play more with them. Sit down and watch with them. Ask them what they're working towards. Learn about the narrative of the game that they're playing, about the choices that they had to make as the main character, about what that meant to them when they had to make that hard choice. There's all kinds of stories and decisions and opportunities happening in video games that are really meaningful for a kid's development. And ultimately, so the thing that I want to conclude with is that video games are play, and play is essential to our development as people. Play is active. It uses our bodies and our minds. And in case you were to say that video games are not active with our bodies, have your kids wanted a VR headset yet? Right? Or have they used DDR, like Dance Dance Revolution, or Wii Sports, right? Like these are games that have now developed that they do engage us physically. Gaming is play because it engages the part of our brain that recognizes risk and adventure. There are real consequences in the game if my character dies. And I have to take that seriously as the player, and it weighs on me emotionally, and that's okay. Because kids also are learning in the play to manage that risk and to manage that anxiety and to think through the consequences of their actions and to think about how well stocked their inventory is to give themselves a health potion if they fall off that cliff. Those are really fantastic skills that our kids are developing that we might not be aware of as they're playing through these games. Play increases our communication. It's enjoyable. It's involved, right? It takes concentration and focus. It's meaningful. This is one that I really want to hammer home too, right? That their play is meaningful to them. And what they're doing on that platform might not make sense to us, but it means something to them, and it's important for us to find out what that is. And why it's meaningful to them or why it's meaningful to their peers. Because they might feel the need to prove themselves to their peers or show what they can do to their peers. And so it's meaningful. It's sociable and interactive. It's symbolic. Kids are able to test out roles and feelings and behaviors and relationships and replay things that have already happened in order to make sense of them over and over if they replay missions or if they go back and play a game again. If you have a kid who has played a game multiple times, that's curious to me. Why do they want to go experience that world again? What does it give them the opportunity to do or to discover or to try out? I just recently started playing Horizon Zero Dawn, and the main character is female, and I realized I've never played an adventure game where the protagonist is female, and it's awesome. Because she gets treated way differently than by the male figures in the game than the male protagonist does in all my other adventure games. That's curious. It gives me an opportunity to empathize maybe more with some of the women in my life or the women in this world when I play a game that has a female protagonist. And also play is voluntary. It's something that we choose to do, it's something that we choose to engage in, and video games get to tap into all these things. So in a world where we oftentimes are more restrictive or we can be accused sometimes of being helicopter parents sometimes, and sometimes we need to be right around parental controls and all that stuff, right? We have to have safeguards. Play is an opportunity to explore and to have a big sandbox, and that's really important for kids' development. So I just want to throw out there that video games are an opportunity to connect with our kids, to know them, to understand them, to invite them into a relationship. It's an opportunity for them to discover themselves and take risks and to build skills and to learn. It's an opportunity for us to learn their world, and it's a digital world that they're occupying, and so it's an opportunity for us to learn how they occupy it and how they cope with the stresses in that world and how those can translate to the real world that they live in when they turn the machine off. I think that's where I'll start.
Yeah, we've got actually quite a few questions about video games. So
cool.
I'm going to ask that we get one response on each of these for the sake of time. I do want to end on time. So really quick, Jonathan, could you explain Twitch and Discord?
Oh, okay, so Twitch is a platform that allows you to stream video games online that other people can watch as you play. So it's pretty cool, and you can do that privately, like only allow certain people in, or you can make it public and it can become a huge platform. So you might have kids who want to watch other gamers but not play themselves. That's part of the gaming community now. And you might have kids who really want to platform their own skills and abilities and have followerships in Twitch. Discord is a platform that it's kind of hard to explain. It's kind of like a private message board / public message board. If you open it up to anybody, it can handle video calls, voice calls. So I'll use Discord as a platform to talk to my friends who are playing other games at the same time, and we're all just on our headsets talking to each other in a group call. Or a Discord server can be a private server where it's invite only for people to participate in. So I've got clients and friends who have their own Discord servers, and it's just the people that they know in those Discord servers for them to talk about how to beat a level, how to overcome a boss, when they're going to get together and game again. And it's not exclusive to gamers. Discord is not a gaming only platform. Yeah, Discord's a pretty big community. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Uh-huh.
All right, we have a couple questions here about a concern about not being able to engage real life activities, or that video games is maybe like the only way that a student expresses themselves when they have time or they're bored or something like that. What can parents do if they're concerned
let
that
me
their kid is only engaging in
jump
video
on that.
games
I
and
was
not
listening
able
for
to
the
engage
question, but
real
thank you.
world?
Yeah, jump on there, Patrick.
So it's interesting that we point to video games as the only place where people might be living in fantasy. I read fiction all the time, and I've done it since I was 8 years old. Nobody ever thought that I was going to become addicted to reading fiction, and nobody ever was worried about my personal well-being. So, your presentation was just so reassuring, and I feel like the message is just relax, okay? It's okay to engage in fantasy unless you see warning signs that fantasy has taken over and they've lost touch with reality.
Yeah, and for that, it is extremely small, the percentage of gamers that ends up being the case for. And if that does happen, I would want to point to a bigger question of what else is happening in their world that makes it so that this is the only place where they are themselves or feel safe. What are the qualities of their connections, and is some of that personal responsibility to go out and take risks and try real world living, et cetera, et cetera? Sure. And also stepping stones, right? I can't believe I'm going to say this. Baby steps. Right? It's recognizing what's going on in the rest of their world that, yeah, they might need to work on some skill development or build some new friendships or get exposed to new opportunities or overcome some issue that they need help from you or a therapist to help overcome or something, but I would take a bigger picture than just video games.
Yeah, thanks.
What about physical activity? They
How
don't
about-
want to go outside.
yeah.
It's been winter. Now it's 60 degrees and sunny.
Yeah.
Go outside. No, I don't want to. I just want to play video games.
Uh-huh.
Is that okay? Is that the same level? Outside
Yeah.
sun versus sitting at a computer?
That's a great question. And I feel like that speaks somewhat to family's values. Like, what are our values as a family? What are our priorities as a family? What's our rule of life and technology going to be as a family? And pick your battles, because I think that the data suggests that it's not always going to, it might feel negative because it conflicts with our personal values or how we want to live as a person, but it's not necessarily tied to them having an antisocial life or a disconnected life. That the online community is a huge place now where a lot of people do have a sense that their needs are being met socially, cognitively, etc.
I'll just use the book example again. So, I mean, there is such a thing as a bookworm. And in generations past, there were parents that were worried about their kids that were just reading books all the time. So I guess the things to watch for are, are all their muscles atrophied? Are they not able to walk anymore? I mean, when do we actually become worried about our kids' physical activity? And I would just wager that that's probably a very, very small number. Physical education is required in most schools, so they're going to get it. And if you really want, when your kids are younger, if you want to build some healthy habits, make family walk time. Do something like that. Make sure it gets built in.
Yeah, thank you. For the sake of time, we have several other great questions. If I didn't get to your question, I apologize. I am going to put my email and Sarah's email up here. They're both pretty easy. You can find them on the website. If you have a follow-up question or want to be connected to one of the panelists to ask them directly a question, please email one of us. Or if you want to set up a time to meet, we both have space in our schedule to do that. So Additionally, we are going to send an email later this week that has a list of community mental health resources, and we're going to include some of the content here. And I believe we're going to have contact information for the panelists. So if you want to wait for that, reach out to them directly. Please do that. We want to continue to be a resource for you. So with that, I'm going to have Sarah join us back up here, and she's going to pray to end the evening. Thank you so much for joining us, and yeah, we'll see you around.
All right, let's give it up for our panelists. They were amazing and awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Let's bow our heads. Lord God, we thank you for this night. We thank you for the opportunity to be in community together and to journey together, Lord. We have a lot of questions still. We're just starting this conversation. And God, we invite you into these conversations. Lord, lead us and guide us. Protect our children. Lord God, we pray. In your name, amen.